Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, Leading the Future, Women at the Helm of Mediterranean Science and Higher Education, which is organized by the Union for the Mediterranean in partnership with the Agencia Catalana de Cooperación y Desenvolupament, Catalan Agency of Development Cooperation. I see that you are all connecting. Good. So, in order to start, without further ado, please allow me to give the floor for the opening remarks to Deputy Secretary General for Human Development of the Union for the Mediterranean, Petra Cashman. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished partners, colleagues, it's a pleasure to open this important discussion and to see so many institutions, programs, actors uniting voices and forces in support of gender-balanced leadership. The numbers speak loudly and clearly. Education is where gender equality has advanced furthest in our region. Women today make up the majority of students and graduates, in some countries even in STEM. But progress has too often stopped at the level of participation. It has not translated in equal access to leadership. And this is not about lack of talent or ambition. It is about structural barriers that continue to shape who leads, who decides, and whose voices count. And this is a loss for the whole region. Today's discussion is not about helping women. It's about helping the whole region progress. Because when gender equality is in place, the whole society performs better. Peace processes are stronger. Innovation ecosystems are more productive. Environmental action is more efficient. Equality is not simply a fairness issue. It's a competitiveness issue, a development issue, and an issue of regional transformation. This is why the UFM is making it an absolute priority across all thematic areas, and we are deliberately focusing on higher education and research. Because universities do much more than generate knowledge. They shape norms, behaviors, and future leadership. They are thus central to the solution. Our goal is to support a growing community of universities committed to gender-sensitive leadership and governance, and we invite all of you to contribute your research, your experience, and your partnerships to this collective movement. We're building on real momentum. Last week, we were in Marseille for the closing of the very successful We4Lead project, whose legacy now continues through Women Leading Change, supported by the government of Catalonia. A dozen of universities will be accompanied in reform efforts this year in Morocco, Lebanon, and Syria. We are pleased to have among us today some of the leading experts of We4Lead and to present the foundations of Women Leading Change. But institutional change must go hand in hand with policy change, because in the end, it's the policies and measures at the national and local level that make the difference. That's why we're bringing this agenda and the recommendations of today's webinar to our 43 member states. This is especially timely as the region prepares for 3 ministerial meetings in 2027 on higher education, on research and innovation, and on gender equality. As we look ahead to the 2026 UFM Gender Equality Progress Report, leadership will remain the critical benchmark of whether progress is truly being delivered. We're particularly grateful for the presence today of Deputy Director General for Research and Innovation of the European Commission, Maria Cristina Russo, whose leadership has been instrumental in advancing policy dialogue in the UFM, and whose own trajectory reflects the importance of women's leadership in shaping institutions. I also wish to extend, on behalf of the whole UFM, thanks to Generalitat of Catalonia, to you, Director General Costafredo, and the whole team at the Catalan Agency of Development Cooperation. We thank you for recognizing the strategic importance of gender equality, the strategic role of universities, and for making regional cooperation in this field possible. Thank you, and I now pass the word to you, Director General Costafredo.
Thank you a lot, colleagues of Union for the Mediterranean and colleagues from the different universities and municipalities that are part of this project that we are promoting in a really strategic partnership. Women Leading Change, Gender Responsive Leadership in Mediterranean Universities and Municipalities. We are really happy to share with you some messages in this opening session, because we really believe that this partnership and this project is a strategic not only for the Union for Mediterranean, but also for the Catalan cooperation, the cooperation of the government of Catalonia, for different reasons. Let me go through these few reasons. I will be really synthetic. The first is that for us is really important and really relevant for the government of Catalonia to have this strategic partnership with Union for Mediterranean organization, because the Union for Mediterranean is the most relevant and influential multilateral organization in the Mediterranean, based and placed in Barcelona, in Catalonia, and with this capacity of agenda setting in the Mediterranean agenda towards the European Union, towards the region, towards also our same society and government. So having this strategic relationship with the Union for Mediterranean is really relevant for us. Second, as Catalan cooperation, the Mediterranean as a region with these shared values of societies, political shared values, institutional shared values, cultural shared values, is a priority. The Mediterranean has been always a priority since the beginning of the Catalan cooperation, a priority in terms of establishing strategic partnerships with civil society organizations, with academic organizations, with institutions, with local and regional governments, even with private sector. For us, having these agendas in terms of fostering equality, not only economic equality, but also gender equality and political equality in the Mediterranean, is at the center of our mandate. So because of that, we are really engaged with this project, and we think that this project addresses the core of our political mandate. I've been referring to that, and Petra has been referring to that. The Mediterranean, we see the Mediterranean region as a region for opportunities, shared values, international cooperation, regional cooperation, but we are really aware that the Mediterranean, as other regions, also other the Catalan society being part of this reality, but that the Mediterranean is crossed of structural inequalities, and especially structural gender inequalities that has an expression, an institutional expression, political expression, social expression, cultural expression, and obviously, and this is the core of the seminar today, it has also, these structural inequalities has also an expression in the academia, in the universities, in the academic world. So we stand for a feminist cooperation. We even go beyond the gender-based approach. We stand for a feminist cooperation as the Catalan agency and the Catalan cooperation. We really believe that investing in women leadership, in women networks, in women capacity building, in promoting women leadership in the diverse academic, political, economic institutions is the best way to tackle it and to address these structural gender inequalities. We know that investing money, budgets are important, policies are important, participation is important, strengthening the capacities of civil society, of organizations is important. But the most important and the most difficult thing has to do with institutional change. The institutional change inside our institutions. It can be the government, can be a private company, it can be a civil society organization, and it can be a university. How we promote as women leaders institutional change. That means not only to be at the front as women of these institutions, but also to implement a different and a transformative leadership inside the institution that has to do with doing things differently with the partners inside the institutions, with the partners outside the institutions. So for us, and Petra mentioned it, investing, or this project that is investing in women leadership inside the inside the universities is not only important because this is a contribution in terms of knowledge, research on the specific issues of gender equality, but also because it can have a really powerful transformative agenda in terms of different kinds of leaderships, institutional transformation, and also transforming social norms inside the institutions, and also in these strategic partnerships between the institutions and the municipalities. So let me close my key messages with this last comment on that. We are really happy, really proud of investing and contributing in this initiative that is now involving 10 universities and different municipalities in 3 strategic countries for the Catalan cooperation, Morocco, Lebanon, and Syria. And we really believe that this can work as a pilot and with high possibilities and with a high potential to scaling up these initiatives. Thanks a lot. And really, I wish you that this seminar, I will stand for a while, will be really fruitful, and we will be really inspired with this and your messages. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your word, Director General. Before moving on, a quick information of logistics. This webinar is interpreted in Arabic and English for all of you that have connected, so you will also find a button at the bottom if you wish to listen a different language. Thank you, Petra and Andrea, the DSG and Director General, for your kind words of introduction. Without further ado, we would like now to shift to the topic of leading change in institutions. When designing this webinar, we really wanted to show how institution can lead to change. And for this, we really wanted to give the floor to the Deputy Director General of the G Research and Innovation at the European Commission, Maria Cristina Russo, that is not only herself an example of leadership in institution, but also a long-time advocate for humanitarian cooperation on research and innovation. So, Deputy Director General, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Giuseppe, and good morning to everybody from Brussels. I'm very, very happy to participate to this seminar, not only for testifying the importance of women leadership, but also, as Giuseppe mentioned, for my strong commitment to work with the UFM. And for that, I take the occasion to also give my regards to the newly appointed Deputy Secretary General for Human Development of the UFM, dear Petra. I look forward to meeting you soon. And also, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Director General of the Development for Cooperation and the Government of Catalonia, and say how important it is that both institutions and government work together to advance on these important questions. A lot has already been said by the two previous speakers, but I also really would like to stress the fact that when we speak about gender, about women's leadership in science and in higher education, it is an issue that really goes far beyond representation. It is about the kind of future that we want to build. It is about the strength of our institutions. It's about the quality of the research and the capacity of our societies to innovate, to prosper, and to respond to the challenges of our time. Because when women are absent from leadership, we are not only excluding talent, but we are limiting excellence and narrowing the perspectives. This is why the conversation we are having today matters, and this seminar and this project is very, very important. And these are not just talks and affirmation, because the numbers tell us a story of progress, but also a story of persistent gap, unfortunately. Indeed, across Europe and across the Mediterranean, women are increasingly taking their place in the universities, in the labs, in the research institutions. In many countries, women do represent more than half of university graduates, including in scientific fields. They are making essential contributions to discovery, innovation, and education. But, there is a paradox. When we look at the highest levels of decision-making, the picture changes. According to the SHE figures 2024, and these figures are produced by the services of DG Research Innovation in the Commission, and they tell a lot because indeed they say that women account for only 26% of heads of higher education institutions in European Union. And this figure tells us something fundamental. The issue is not only talent. It is not talent at all. It is not ambition. The issue, it is structure. It's a structure that is not working because women are entering the system, succeeding in the system, contributing very highly in the system, but too often they are not advancing to the top of the system as they should. And that matters for all of us, because leadership in science and higher education not only shapes the future that we want, as I said, but it also determines which research priorities are selected and funded. This is not simply a gender issue, it's a question of scientific excellence. And until we fully utilize the talents of our researchers, we limit what science can achieve. Now, as always, recognizing the problem is the first step. The next step is to do something for it, is to act. And the European Commission, in this respect, is leading the way. Indeed, the European Commission has placed gender equality at the heart of its vision for research and innovation. Last month, the Commission adopted the Gender Equality Strategy 2026-2030 with a clear recognition that equality cannot be achieved simply by opening the doors to participation. So what does it mean in practice for research and innovation and in general? In general, what we're doing in the Commission is that we are striving all the efforts to ensure equal access to leadership, to opportunities, and to influence. This means changing the structures that shape careers. It means addressing the barriers that continue to affect recruitment, promotion, across the access to resources, work-life balance, and institutional culture. More specifically, when I'm referring to the research innovation policy, through Horizon Europe, institutions must now have gender equality plans in place to access to the EU research funding. So it means that in order to have funds through Horizon Europe, even if you have succeeded, obviously, you need to have specific gender equality plans. And I repeated this statement because it's not just a symbolic requirement, but it is a structural one. And it's a requirement that we believe can make the change. It means that the institutions, the research institutions that participate in Horizon Europe must actively examine where inequality exists, if they exist, how to address them, and commit to address them in order to create the conditions for women to be actively participating in the scientific projects and obviously in the future to progress into positions of leadership. Now, our ambition and responsibility to promote women participation in, especially in science and innovation, extend to the wider Mediterranean region, because our research and innovation future is deeply interconnected. Certainly, you know, I do not have to repeat it here, but I would like to underline that the Mediterranean is a region of extraordinary talent, energy, and potential. It is a home to a young and increasingly educated population, and women across the region are entering universities, contributing to research, and shaping innovation ecosystems. This is why, for us, the partnership with the Union for the Mediterranean is so strategic, and we've been working a lot for that. Giuseppe said it. I was personally very committed to promote the partnership on research and innovation with the Union of the Mediterranean. We have developed concrete actions based on a political statement endorsed by ministerial meetings of research and innovation ministers of the UFM, with concrete actions in important areas such as climate change, such as health, such as digital transition. And we have created a dedicated platform in the Union for the Mediterranean on research and innovation. And now what we have to do is that we have to mobilize our efforts in order to really have a stronger participation of women in this context. Women count, women leadership is important, and in order to promote and accelerate the change that we want to see in the Mediterranean region, with the UFM, we need to promote women leadership in the Mediterranean. And this is something that I can say that is very much also linked to the Pact for the Mediterranean that the European Commission adopted last year, which aims at striving and increasing our efforts to work together with the Mediterranean in order to have stronger EU-Southern Med relations, and also with the other countries of the UFM. And that is very much linked with all the endeavors that we are taking at the level of the European Commission in order to promote, in general, women in leadership. And I mentioned some earlier on the fact that we adopted a new pact also on women last month on the 8th of March. So with that, I would like to close by saying that you have the strongest commitment on the side of the European Commission to continue to work to promote the cooperation with the UFM and to promote the role of women in this context, especially and in particular on research and innovation. A couple of words on myself. Indeed, I'm a woman in leadership position. And as I said yesterday in a seminar where I was, I think that in order to move ahead in terms of women leadership, we need to operate the structural changes, and we need also to make to prove a lot of resilience to tackle the obstacles that exist. My experience and the experience of many of us that are participating in this seminar show that it works. So let's join forces and let's make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your words, and also for recognizing that in institution the steps are to recognize, to commit, and to act. And indeed, the European Commission has been leading the way in strategies and funding. And now, especially on the Pact for the Mediterranean, there is opportunity, an historical opportunity for acting hand in hand in the south of the Mediterranean, including to the UFN Platform for Research and Innovation. So thank you again for your keynote speech. And now it is time to move to the first panel, which is on women in academic leadership. And I'm very pleased to give the floor to the wonderful moderator of this session, my dear colleague, Anna Dorengricchia, that is going to take the lead on this. Anna, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Giuseppe. Thank you to the previous speakers. I'm really privileged to moderate today's session focused on women in academic leadership. As was already highlighted from the previous intervention and the concept note of our event today, despite important progress in women participation in higher education and research across Euro-Mediterranean region, leadership positions remain male-dominated, and women represent a growing share of graduates and researchers, especially in STEM in Mediterranean countries, but only about a quarter of institutional leaders. So the gap represents a loss of talent, innovation, and inclusive governance for our society. So today, in this session, we will explore two key dimensions: the barriers preventing women from reaching top academic leadership roles, and how universities can act as engines of gender equality, especially through governance reform and gender equality plans. And I'm really delighted to be joined today by three distinguished speakers who represent 3 out of the 9 university partners of the We for Lead project, Women Empowerment for Leadership and Equity in Higher Education Institutions, a regional project which aims to increase women access to the highest decision-making position in order to contribute to a fully inclusive governance. I'm pleased to introduce first Professor Isabelle Régnier. She is Vice President for Gender Equality for the Fight Against Discrimination at Aix-Marseille University and a Professor of Social Psychology. Her research focuses on gender stereotypes, bias, and the impact they have on academic performance and career progression. She has played a key role in designing and implementing gender equality plans. Welcome, Professor Régnier. And we have with us, in order to also assure balance in our discussion today, Professor Salim Mekdesi, who is Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Business Administration at the Lebanese University and founder of the Center for Sustainability and Gender Equality. He is a coordinator of sub-network on employability at the Mediterranean University Union, UNIMED, and he has a consolidated experience in higher education quality accreditation. Thank you for being with us. And the third speaker is Professor Olfa Boualeg. She is Vice President of the University of Sousse since 2021 and former Vice Dean of the Faculty of Medicine of Sousse. She's holder of the UNESCO Chair in Health Literacy and Sustainable Development and President of the Network of Francophone Women University Leaders, RESUF. She has been actively involved in university governance and institutional development. Thank you to all for being with us, even if I think Olfa is maybe still joining us because he's currently in Tokyo. So hopefully there will not be any challenge in terms of connection. Thank you again for being with us. I would start with a general question to all the speakers to set the scene and frame today's discussion. We talk a lot about women leadership, and when we refer to women leadership, we refer to representation. But when we think about representation, we have to distinguish between descriptive, meaning numerical, how many women leadership positions we have, which is important, but also substantive leadership. So I would kind to ask you to both of the speakers currently with us in this moment, one key feature, in your opinion, which should distinguish the descriptive numerical representation from the substantive one in terms of female leadership in academics. Professor Renier, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So, first of all, good morning, everybody. And thank you very much for the UFM and the government of Catalonia for the invitation to this webinar. I'm so pleased to share with moment with all of you. Well, according to me, increasing the number of women in leadership position is of course necessary, but it is not sufficient. Why? Because numbers can be misleading in the sense that women are not in the positions where key decisions are made or where resources are allocated. So, according to me, the challenge is to recognize that women have all the competencies and the legitimacy to lead, and then to ensure that they have full and equal access to positions that truly matter. And this is specifically which was at the core of the We For Lead project you have mentioned, which was funded by the European Commission and that we have conducted during 3 years with 9 universities from Lebanon, Algeria, Tunisia, Spain, and Italy to transform the governance of our universities.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for sticking to the time. Much appreciated. Thank you. Professor McDessie, the floor is yours. Same question.
Yes, good morning to all. Thank you, dear Anna. As my colleague and friend, Professor Renier said, representation is an important first step, but it will be just the first step. It is only the beginning, and it's not sufficient. Having women present in leadership positions in higher education institutions or in any another institution is valuable symbolically and institutionally. But substantive leadership means for us and for all that their presence translates into real influence. Well, we can say influence on decisions, influence on priorities, influence on governance culture, recruitment, student life, and maybe strategic direction. In other words, it is a difference between being present at the table and being able to shape a strategy, to shape what happens around the table. For universities, the real objective should not be numbers all alone, but inclusive leadership where skills, competence, diversity of perspectives, and fairness improve the institution as a whole. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think both of you have stressed the need to be sure that women will be not only in the leadership position, but this leadership can influence what is governance, what is policy. And I would add from my side that it's important also to monitor what kind of impact this women leadership can have on gender equality in the university. So it's how women in a leadership position can support women in the university and in academia in general. Thank you very much. I would like now going through your perspective and your experience on which kind of barriers you have faced in implementing and developing gender equality policies and tools in your institution. I would like to go back to Isabel and to give your perspective on 3 main questions. First of all, the main structural barriers that you have been facing when talking about having an inclusive governance at the university. Meaning this can be bias, can be in recruitment and promotion, can be lack of transparency in leadership selection or work-life balance. just to mention a few of them. But please, the floor is yours. And then what and which way, at which extent the gender equality plan has tackled this, and if you can give us a concrete example. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna, for these very important questions. To answer, we'll adopt a scientific perspective, which was a core feature of the WeFolIt project, by the way. And why a scientific perspective? Because gender inequalities are well documented, for example, in social and cognitive psychology, and these scientific fields provide us concrete tools to address all these barriers. And maybe that a first major barrier is implicit gender bias in recruitment and promotion. Research shows that gender stereotypes operate through automatic cognitive processes that influence how we evaluate competence and leadership potential. And these biases are not necessarily conscious, but they are systematic. They lead to biased evaluation of men and women, and specifically in fields that are stereotypically associated with men, such as science and technology. But importantly, this goes beyond specific disciplines. Indeed, we observe a glass ceiling across all academic fields, including those where women are well represented, even where there is a strong pool of qualified women that are less likely to access to the highest positions. So this is the first big barrier that we must address when we want to implement a gender equality plan. A second important barrier, you have mentioned it, is the lack of transparency in how some leadership positions are located. In many cases, access to leadership relies on cooptation and informal social networks. And these networks tend to be denser, richer, and more influential among men, which means that men are more likely to be identified, encouraged, and selected for leadership positions. So in practice, when institutions anticipate succession for key positions, they often turn first to male candidates within these networks. So this is a very strong and systematic barrier. And the second important barrier concerns the way academic careers are organized. They are based on norms of constant availability, mobility, and productivity. And these norms are not neutral. They contribute to what we call the motherhood penalty, where women's careers are negatively affected by parenthood, while men's careers are not impacted in the same way. Of course, these are only a few examples, but the key point is that all these barriers are deeply interconnected. This is why it is actually very difficult to say that one is harder to change than the others. Why? Because all these barriers are rooted in the same underlying system of gender stereotypes or gender biases, if you want. You know, these social and cultural beliefs that assign different roles, expectations, and levels of legitimacy to men and women. And these gender stereotypes are very powerful because they operate at multiple levels: individual, collective, cognitive, social, and institutional levels. Your second question is also very important because it asks how can gender equality plans concretely address all these barriers. And first, I believe that gender equality plans can be very powerful tools to drive change, but provided that they are used properly. And according to me, this point is very important because the risk is to treat them as a formal requirement, okay? But the problem that to be effective, gender equality plans need to be real operational tools for change. This means concrete actions with clear implementation and, importantly, actions that are informed by research and based on what we know about the mechanisms producing these inequalities. It also means that JEP must be adapted to each institution. There is no single model. No single model. Actions need to reflect the specific context, the level of advancements, and the priorities of each institution. They also need to be realistic and, of course, to be supported by the governing body. Otherwise, they remain ineffective. We can, of course, learn for existing plans, but simply copy and paste approaches do not work. In other words, it is not about having a plan, but about implementing measures that are both context-specific and grounded in evidence. And maybe that a first key action in equality plan, gender equality plan, is collecting gender disaggregated data. And we know, especially in the We Fall It project, that this is a key action. It is a difficult action. It is not so easy to correctly collect and analyze gender data, but it is essential. It is essential, why? To make inequalities visible, because what is not measured is quite very easy to ignore. And importantly, data provide an objective basis to assess the situation. When properly collected and analyzed, using robust and scientifically validated indicators, they allow institutions to establish an accurate diagnosis of existing inequalities. And this diagnosis is key, not only because it helps identify where to act, of course, but also it legitimizes the actions that are implemented. And this is very important. If the actions are not legitimized, they will not be implemented because they will be resistant. A second action is addressing gender bias in recruitment and promotion. This is absolutely central because there are the key moments where careers are shaped and access to leadership is decided. This requires raising awareness at all levels, starting with, of course, university governing body, but also recruitment and promotion committees, and more broadly, all staff involved in evaluation process. The goal is not just awareness, but to progressively institutionalize equality by making these biases visible, understood, very important. If we don't know how they are working in our mind, it's very difficult to act against them. And then we have to take them into account in the decision-making process. And the third and important action is to address sexual harassment and gender-biased violence. It is often underestimated, but it is a major structural barrier. These situations are very concrete consequences on women's careers, working conditions. If institutions do not actively prevent and address these issues, they create environments where inequalities are reinforced and where women are more likely to leave or disengage. So we have to address them from gender equality policies. This is a central component of them. And of course, this has only a few examples. We have to keep in mind that gender equality plans are effective only when they address inequalities at different levels. And you asked me for a concrete example of a measure that has made a real difference. So I will give you a concrete example, which is at the core of what we made at Aix-Marseille University, and which is also at the core of what we have implemented thanks to the We For It project. There is a broad consensus today, even within the European Commission, that we need to address implicit gender bias. Okay, everybody agree. Let's on that. But the big question is, how do we do that? And under what condition can training about implicit gender bias can be effective? These are big questions. We have the answer. Thanks to We For It, we have the answer. We know that we can implement standardized protocol for recruitment committee based on several steps. The first step, it is the first and necessary step, but not sufficient. But it's the first one. And the first one is to use some tests, for example, the implicit association test, which is a validated scientific tool to make committee members aware of their own gender bias at the automatic level. This is the first step. And then we have to explain them how do these automatic biases function and are able to influence them when they evaluate CV for promotion or for recruitment. And for that, we have elaborated some tools based on research on cognitive and social sciences, where we explain very quickly and in simple terms how this automatic bias can affect that evaluation and decision. And this is important because when you have around the table big experts that are used to evaluate CV, to make decisions in their scientific field, it's very difficult to make them understand that they are not always objective and that sometimes implicit biases can influence their evaluation. And then we also make them show a short video that illustrates how biases can emerge in committee discussions so that they can actively regulate these dynamics. So the idea is not to intervene in the decision itself of the committee, but to make them be aware of these biases at the right moment. And this is very important, at the right moment, so that they can identify them and avoid reproducing them. And the impact has been very significant. Thanks to this action, we were able, concerning the recruitment of full professors at my university, we were able to increase them from 14% to 50%. Imagine. So thanks to this action, the proportion of women recruited as full professors has significantly increased without any quota, without any injunction or penalty and so on, only with encouraging committee members to follow a short training session explaining how implicit gender bias are working.
Thank you very much. I took a lot of notes because all you have said, very interesting. I would try to summarize in three main messages. First of all, there is a strong need to bridge policy to implementation because all the tools of the gender equality plan need to be operational. Yeah. Two, no one size fits all. So you need to be based on the specific context and needs. And third, I would say that monitoring accountability in terms of measurable indicators. And the example that you gave, it's very impressive because if you already, since the beginning of the development of this specific tool, you have already recorded this increase, I think it's a very, very good indicator. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I will come back to you for the next round of questions. And I will now give the floor to Professor Salim Mekdesi. And because you are a man, you are a faculty dean, so we would really like to have your perspective on three main questions. First of all, what role do male leaders and institutional culture play in advancing gender equality in leadership? What changes are needed at government levels? And third, but not last, can gender equality succeed without a top-down commitment? The floor is yours.
Thank you again. Look, in my opinion, men play an essential role because culture often follows leadership behavior. And in Lebanon and many countries, I think, for example, we have a kind of a paternalist culture. So if senior leaders promote fairness, transparency, respect, the institution gradually evolves in this direction. And if leadership or leaders remain passive, inequalities can continue silently, even without bad intention. And I will stress here that sometimes there is not really bad intention. That's why we need to use a transformative approach, or we need to have transformative leaders and transformative projects like We4Lead, for example. In the closing ceremony of We4Lead last week, I told my colleagues and friends and partners that We4Lead transformed me first, and then it has an impact on my institution. Leaders should not see this topic as something external to them. Men leaders specifically are part of the solution, just as women are. Because good leadership means opening opportunities to talent wherever it exists, either in men or in women. Let me say something. For example, in Lebanon, with all the challenges we face, we cannot afford to leave talent underused. It's not about a brand. It's not about a concept, a trend. Inclusion is not symbolic. Inclusion is necessary. It's about inclusiveness. It's about fairness. It's about merit. Institutional culture also matters greatly. So we are all in higher education institutions, or most of us. Sometimes the barrier is not a formal rule, but it's a kind of habits. It's a kind of assumptions of networks, or as my colleague Professor Renier said, it's about the stereotypes that have existed for years, maybe before us. In Lebanon, as in many countries, we have talented women in academia, in research, in administration, in entrepreneurship, and in all sectors. The challenge is often not talent. The challenge is pathways to leadership. Our responsibility is to make those pathways clearer and fairer for everyone. So, as I said before, it's not about labels. It's about building universities where talent has a fair chance to contribute and to lead. The issue is not, please let me explain something. It's my opinion. I see that the issue is not men versus women. It's not like that. The issue is whether systems recognize merit fairly. Well, do we need changes? Yes. Do we need changes at the governance level in universities? Yes. In my opinion, we can need 3 changes at the governance of the university. First, more transparent selection and appointment systems. When leadership processes are clear and merit-based, trust increases and opportunities widen. Second, leadership development pipelines. Because many excellent academics, men and women, are never prepared for leadership roles. Universities should train future deans, directors, decision makers, maybe somehow early. And third, accountability through data. On We4Lead as well, we worked on the data on each partner university. Institutions should regularly examine representations, promotions, committee memberships, and decision-making participation. This can be managed through tools, like the tools we produced in We4Lead project. Good governance is not only about budgets and regulations. At the Lebanese University, we are the only public university in Lebanon, and during the last years, we faced severe budgets condition. But it's not related. If we had severe budgets condition, we can have good governance. It's not related. It's also about how fairly institutions identify and promote talent. Beyond policies, universities need leadership pipelines and practical cooperation. This is why initiatives such as We for Lead project are important, and women leading change as well, because they transform principles into training, into networking, and institutional learning across the region. At the Lebanese University as well and across the region, strengthening governance is part of strengthening the future of higher education itself. Our participation in the We for Lead project reflects our belief that governance excellence and inclusion must progress together. Well, uh, does gender equality succeed without strong top-down commitment? Let me say it's difficult. Real change usually needs both directions at the same time, top-down commitment and bottom-up energy. You see? So it's not in one direction. If leadership is committed, but the community is disengaged, reforms remain formal. And if the community is motivated, but leadership is absent or passive, progress remains slow. So presidents, rectors, dean, councils, ministries, agencies have an important responsibility. It's about to send clear signals through policies, through appointments, and priorities. Well, I think sustainable change is never imposed only from above and never achieved only from below. It requires a kind of partnership inside the university and with other partners outside the university or outside the country.
Thank you very much. And I took also in this case some notes to summarize some key messages that you share with us. First of all, leadership, being female or men, should put in place clear and structured pathways to leadership. So this is somehow the top-down commitment. Second thing that you mentioned, gender equality at the university is not a branding, should be a systemic and structural change coming from working on stereotype, but also on legal framework, on budget, and on governance. And the third point that I would like to highlight is you need both. You need energy and you need policy, bottom up and top down. Thank you very much. Absolutely aligned with the main objective of today's discussion. So thank you very much. I'm really happy now to see our third speaker join us. She's in Tokyo, so thank you very much for being with us, Professor Bualag. I'm not sure I can see you. You are with us?
Yes, I'm.
Okay,
I just
perfect.
joined you.
Thank you.
Because
Just
I
to be
have
sure.
a little mistake about
The
hour.
time zone, I understand. It's
Yes,
absolutely
I'm very.
understandable from Tokyo. Thank you for being with us, especially being so far. And I already introduced your profile, but I'm going briefly to repeat to everybody. So you are, sorry, just to give the correct information, Vice President of the University of Sus since 2021. You are also a holder of the UNESCO Chair in Health Literacy and Sustainable Development and President of the Network of Francophone Women University Leaders. So thank you for being with us. And I would go through the questions, the three questions that we would like to address in your case. You are a woman in a senior leadership, which is in itself an achievement. And we would like to hear from you about the barriers that sometimes are invisible, but deeply rooted and felt by women when they pursue leadership role. What support mechanism can be put in place to support this pathway to leadership? And if you have an advice in terms of intergenerational dialogue that you would give to young women who in the academic environment would like to get to leadership position. The floor is yours.
Thank you for giving me the floor. As you said, I'm currently in Japan, and I don't know if I have 8 hours ahead of you. And for me, it is 10 o'clock for you, but bon, I'm really suis désolée. Donc, voilà. Dear professor, distinguished guests, esteemed colleague, and value partner, I'm truly delighted and honored to be with you this afternoon for me to Tokyo, to share our experience in the field of women's leadership. First at all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizer for this webinar, especially Professor João Lobo and Professor Anna Dorangricia for her moderation. I go back to the second, I go to head for the second, because I don't, the second question. As a woman in a senior leadership, I would say that some of the most important barriers are often invisible, yet deeply structured and persistent. First, there are implicit and unconscious biases. They are not always expressed openly, but they influence how leadership potential is perceived. For example, the same behavior can be interpreted differently depending on whether it comes from a man or women. Assertiveness may be seen as leadership in one case, but as aggression in another. In second one, there is the unequal distribution for responsibilities, particularly family and caregiving roles. Even when formal equality exists, women often continue to carry a double workload, which limits time, mobility, and sometimes availability for leadership opportunities. On third, there are informal power structures and networks. Many leadership trajectories are shaped through informal spaces, mentorship circles, professional networks, and decision-making conservation, where women are still underrepresented. This limited access to visibility and sponsorship. In fourth, I would highlight what I call the confidence and recognition gap. Women are often more cautious in self-promotion and tend to wait unit their meet almost all criteria before applied for leadership roles, whereas men are more likely to apply based on potential. At the same time, women's achievements are sometimes less systematically recognized or rewarded. Regarding support mechanisms, several are absolutely critical if we want real to change. If you want real to change, mentorship is essential, but it must be beyond symbolic support. It should include guidance, advocacy, and active sponsorship, meaning that senior leaders not only advise women, but also recommended and open doors for them. Institutional frameworks are equally important. Transparent recruitment process, clear promotion criteria, and accountability mechanism reduce subjectivity and bias in decision-making. Capacity building also plays a major role. Leadership is not only about academic excellence, it also requires strategic thinking, negotiating skills, communication, and institutional understanding. Targeted training and leadership development program help bridge the gap. And finally, institutional culture is decisive. Policy can exist on paper, but what truly matters is whether inclusion is practiced, valued, and normalized in everyday governance. I will speak about our experience in our university. Through the We4Lead diagnosis, we identified barriers related to career progress, compensation, and academic mobility. The objective is not only to describe inequalities, but to make them measurable and actionable. Our institutional vision is simple and ambitious: excellence through equality. Gender equality is positioned as a structuring axis of governance fully supported by institutional leadership. By shaping inclusive environments and modern leadership mindset, we link equality directly to academic excellence and sustainable development. The Gender Equality Office functions as a permanent steering mechanism. It defines strategic orientation, coordinated actions, evaluated results, and expand partnership. This structure ensures that gender equality is embedded in daily operations, not treated as a temporary or symbolic initiative. From diagnostic to move it to action, we introduced concrete measures, mandatory training, neutral evaluation tools, structured monitoring, and formal safety protocols. Our capacity building strategy follows a three-step models: awareness, training, and scaling through a the trainer program. This ensures both deep and sustainability. Our action plan is guided by three priorities: supporting women's career development and access to leadership, ensuring stereotype-free recruitment processes, and establishing strong mechanisms to prevent and address gender-based violence. We4Lead is more than a project. It is an ecosystem. It allows us not only to share practices, but to co-create new institutional models for equity. Through partnerships with national institutions, civil society, and international actors, gender equality becomes anchored in broader culture and policy frameworks. And the results are clear. Women's representation in governance is increasing. Academic satisfaction exceeds 19%. And our international visibility continues to grow. This confirms a key message: gender equality is not a cost, it is a performance multiple.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And again, sorry,
okay.
because we have 10 minutes left, so I would like then to give the floor also to question and answer from the public.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that you spot something that was not mentioning in the previous intervention, which is really interesting. You mentioned at the beginning that one of the barriers concerns the access to visibility and sponsorship, which is important, the access to network, access to knowledge, and what you were saying about the capacity building. Capacity building in terms to build a pathway to leadership, as leadership is not a matter of just competencies, it's a matter also of different skills in terms of leadership. And happy to see that you have structured through this project a very operational approach in terms of support, in terms of training, advocacy, and monitoring. Thank you very much. Very interesting experience. And I would like to ask you now to answer to the three of you to the following three questions in 2-3 minutes each maximum. First of all, you have already mentioned somehow this. In your opinion, what makes a gender equality plan effective and not symbolic, as Selim was saying before? How are you measuring the impact of the gender equality plan in your organization? And in the framework of the gender equality plan, quota is necessary, not sufficient, not the suitable tools or not? I will start with Isabel. The floor is yours. Just to be straight to the point, so we can give some space for the question and answer. Thank you.
Yes. So for your first question about the efficacy of gender equality plan, I think I have already answered. According to me, they are efficient when they are based on data and translate in concrete actions. When also they are visible and they have explicit support from the institution's leadership. We need that the governing body value the action plan as a strategic priority. If it is not the case, the JEP will remain ineffective. How do we measure success in gender equality in academic leadership? Of course, numbers are still important, but as I said before, they matter, but we have to be careful where and how we measure them. We have to identify the positions of real power, and there we have to have numbers about the evolution of women in this very important decision-making position. But maybe that we have to evaluate how the whole institution is evolving. I think that resistance to gender equality plan is a very good indicator, because all gender equality plan encounter resistance and they are very powerful. Resistance is very powerful. When resistance becomes to decline, it is often a sign that deeper transformation is actually taking place. So, for example, how many people agree to be trained on implicit gender bias? So the way the different actions are used and lead to voluntary participation is a good indicator. According to me, this is important to assess how the whole institution evolved to the gender equality plan. Quota. Quota. So on one hand, I think they are often necessary. Without quota, women would simply not be present in many decision-making bodies. So they can play an important role in opening access and correcting some structural imbalances. But on the other hand, I really think that quota are not sufficient by their own, and even sometimes can be counterproductive. Why? Because if they are not supported by explanation and training, they can generate resistance and even reinforce the idea that women are selected not because of their competence, but because of their gender. And from a research perspective, we know that this kind of perception can in fact reinforce gender stereotypes. So you see the vicious circle about that. So we have to be careful about that. Quota can open the doors, but they need to be combined with deeper training to better explain why they are needed.
Thank you very much. And again, very interesting input from your side in terms of if we need to assess the impact, we have to use both quantitative and qualitative tools, absolutely. And enabling environment, how it's working and how it's evolving towards the gender equality, and the quotas is always a controversial, but the idea to train people what does quota can bring, it's a very, very important point. Thank you very much. Selim, the floor is yours to add, complement, or maybe object of what Isabel has just said.
Yes, thank you. I'll be direct. I have seen many gender equality plans, but a plan becomes effective when it moves from statements to mechanisms. That means clear objectives, measurable indicators, responsible persons, realistic timelines, and regular review. If a plan says, for example, we support equality, that is positive, but insufficient. But if it says, we will improve representation in committees, leadership training, mentoring, recruitment fairness, work-life balance, and we will measure progress annually, then it becomes serious. For me, the best plans are integrated into university strategy, not isolated in the Gender Equality Office. About measuring the success in gender equality in academic leadership, we have tools, we have ratios. We measure success in two ways: numbers and also experience. Numbers matter: leadership positions, promotions, committee membership, professorship ranking, research leadership, retention rates. But experience matters too. Do people feel respected? Do they feel opportunities are fair? Do young academics believe leadership is accessible through merit? If statistics improve through year by year, but trust does not, progress will be incomplete. Well, about quotas, for me it's controversial because they often emerge because progress is too slow. They should not replace merit. Quotas should challenge systems where merit has not always been equally recognized. In some contexts, temporary corrective mechanisms may help open doors that have remained closed for structural reasons. But on the long run, on the long-term success, we should be based on building fair systems and leadership preparations and transparent recruitment and equal opportunity. So I will re-say what I said before. It's not men versus women and quotas. It's more about creating an inclusive environment and a transparent system. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, I think this short, long-term perspective is very important when it comes to quota, and what you're saying in terms of creating an environment where gender equality are really embedded. I think it's a key also concept that we should work on. Thank you very much. Last but not least, Professor Boulege, the same question for you. Again, if you can keep it between 2 or 3 minutes, it would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For mixed gender equality, plain effective rather than symbolic when it moves from declaration of intention to measurable, resourced, and enforceable action embedded in institutional governance. Several key elements make the difference. First, strong institutional according. An effective plan is not a side initiative, it is integrated into the university course. Second, real resources and accountability. Without a dedicated budget, staff, and time allocation, equality remains rhetorical. Effectiveness requires financial commitment, gender-sensitive budgeting, and clear accountability mechanism. On third, data-driven diagnosis and monitoring. A credible plan relies and disaggregated data to identify inequalities, track progress, and adjust policy. On fourth, concrete and enforceable actions. This includes transparent recruitment and promotion process, structured career development pathway, prevention and of gender-based violence, and mechanism to address discrimination. On fifth, culture and behavioral change. Policies along are sufficient training awareness and leadership engagement are essential to transform institutional norms and reduce implicit bias. Finally, evaluation and impact measurement. An effective plan defines indicators of success such as representation at different levels, career progress rates, and workplace climate and regulatory assessment accountment. In short, a gender equality plan is effective when it is structural rather than declarative, operational rather than symbolic, and transformative procedure. How do we measure success in gender equality in academic leadership? A gender equality plan becomes effective rather than symbolic when it moves from declaration of intention to measurable, researched, and enforceable action embedded in institutional governance. What about quota? Quota necessary or controversial tools. Quota are both powerful instruments for accelerating gender equality and highly debated policy tools, which explain why they are often seen as both necessary and controversial. On one hand, quota are considered necessary because they address the structural inertia in many academic systems, informal barriers, unconscious bias, and historical exclusion prevent women from reaching leadership position at a pace that merit-based approaches alone have no corrected. Quota can therefore act as a corrective. They also have a demonstrated effect. Once women are present in leadership roles, they become visible role models. Network diversity and institutional culture gradually change. On the other hand, quota remains controversial. Critics argue that they may be perceived as challenging meritocracy, or they risk reducing complex leadership profiles to numerical targets. Moreover, quota alone do not guarantee substantive equality. Without structural reform, such as transparency, recruitment, monitoring system, and culture change, they may lead only to symbolic representation rather than real influence. The key issue, therefore, is not whether quota are good or bad in absolute terms, but how they are designed and integrated. In conclusion, quota are neither a perfect solution nor a symbolic gesture. They are a pragmatic tool, sometimes necessary to disrupt structural imbalance, but only meaningful when accompanied by deeper institutional transformation that ensure real substantive equality.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of us. And I think you mentioned two important points in addition to what the other speakers say. One is the need for gender sensitive budget when you talk about putting in place and developing gender equality. And the second thing is about this, let's say, measurement in terms of, again, impact, quality in the culture of the organization. So not in just in terms of numerical representation. And this is where the quota debate comes. Thank you very much. We are behind the schedule and I didn't see any specific question on the chat. So I would like to thank to all the speakers. I think you brought up very, very interesting, practical, operational example of tools and mechanisms. Thank you very much to be straightforward and straight to the point to animate today's debate. And I'm now giving the floor to my colleague, João Lobo, project analyst at the Human Development Division, who is going to introduce our new UFM project on women leading the change. Thank you again, João, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna. So yes, Women Leading Change is an initiative that has just been launched to strengthen the capacity of universities and municipalities to promote gender equality and inclusive leadership. The project involves 10 universities from Morocco, Lebanon, and Syria. It was launched last week in Marseille, back-to-back with the We4Lead closing conference. The event brought together university gender coordinators, municipal leaders, and mentor universities. And now the project moves into a capacity building phase, including a training of trainers in Barcelona in June, aimed at creating a pool of experts within universities with municipal representatives trained alongside them. So this will be followed by national advocacy events in Rabat and Beirut, and will conclude with a final conference and the launch of a regional community of practice. So overall, the project serves as a bridge between universities and their municipalities in advancing gender equality, and is aimed at delivering concrete institutional change through action plans, through charters, through structural reforms, and the creation of a trained gender and leadership experts. So today we are pleased to welcome a tandem, a university-municipality tandem from Casablanca. We have with us Professor Naima Chiki from Hassan II University of Casablanca and Mrs. Umaima El Idrissi from the Municipality of Casablanca. And I would like to ask Professor Chiki, who will be, by the way, intervening in Arabic, so please be ready to switch to a translation in English. I would like to ask Professor Chiki how participation in this international initiative can strengthen the university's ongoing work on gender equality, and to Mrs. Al Idrissi from the city of Casablanca, how transformations within universities can translate into concrete impact at the local level. Professor Chiki, the floor is yours.
مرحبا، شكرا جزيلا على الدعوة. سعيدة بالمشاركة في هذا اللقاء والإجابة على سؤالكم عزيزي جواو. أعتقد أن مشاركة جامعة الحسن الثاني بالدار البيضاء في مبادرة مثل Women Leading Change تمثل فرصة مهمة جدا، لأنها تأتي في سياق دينامية موجودة بالفعل داخل الجامعة في مجال المساواة ومقاربة النوع، وفي دعم حضور النساء في الحكامة الجامعية ومواقع المسؤولية. فعلى مستوى الجامعة تم اعتماد ميثاق للمساواة صدق عليه من طرف مجلس الجامعة سنة 2018، كما تم إحداث لجنة للمناصفة والمساواة سنة 2019 في إطار توجه المؤسسات لترسيخ هذه المقاربة داخل الجامعة. كما أن هذه الدينامية تعززت من خلال التوصيات التي أفرزها برنامج تارجت والورشات واللقاءات التي نظمت في هذا الإطار، والتي أكدت على أهمية مأسسة مقاربة النوع داخل الجامعة المغربية، وعلى ضمان استمرارية هذا الورش داخل الجامعة. وهذه السنة تعرف هذه الدينامية نفسا جديدا من خلال إعادة تنشيط عمل لجنة المناصفة والمساواة، وذلك بالاشتغال على برنامج عمل أوضح ومواصلة الاشتغال على آفاق المأسسة داخل الجامعة. ويشمل ذلك مراجعة بعض الأنظمة الداخلية والتفكير في آليات للتتبع والتقييم، وتعزيز إدماج هذه النظر المقاربة في عمل هيئة الحكامة. فمن هنا فإن أهمية مبادرة Women Leading Change تكمن في أنها تتيح لنا الاستفادة من تجارب جامعات أخرى في الفضاء المتوسطي، وتبادل الخبرات والممارسات الجيدة، ودعم بناء القدرات بما يعزز ولوج النساء إلى مواقع المسؤولية واتخاذ القرار داخل مؤسسات التعليم العالي. لذلك أرى أن المشاركة في مثل هذه المبادرة يمكن أن تدعم وتعمق ما تقوم به جامعة الحسن الثاني بالفعل، وأن تساعد أيضا على ضمان استمرارية هذه الجهود وتثمين النتائج المحققة، بما يساهم في ترسيخ المساواة وتعزيز القيادة النسائية داخل الجامعة. وشكرا جزيلا.
Thank you, Professor. Mrs. Al-Idrisi, about how these transformations within universities have also an impact in society at the local level.
Hi everyone. Hi, Mr. Lobo. I hope you can hear me very well. First, thank you very much for having me here. It was very insightful to hear you speak all about women in powerful and leading positions, about Casablanca and the relationship that has the municipality with the university system and how powerful it is. I think it's very important that universities transforms in terms of women leadership, because it impacts directly our society and our city. And I'm going to give you 3 examples for that. First, universities are pipelines of talents. So where women that study there see women in a leadership positions as professors, as dean, these women become visible role models for like younger generations. So this directly influence and inspire and empower these young female students to try to achieve leadership. And this leadership is not something seen as exceptional, but it is very seen as something very, very accessible. Second, universities are deeply connected to our society and our territory. Universities produce data, they produce research papers, they produce ideas, and these ideas directly inform the public opinion. So when women are better represented in these spaces, this directly influence the public opinion and influence like the society as a whole. And from my experience in Casablanca, this directly influenced like our presence last week. Me and Professor Sheikhi from Hassan University is a perfect example of that. We in Casablanca, we have Mayor Nabila Armili, which is a very powerful woman, and her dedication and her political will to bring more women in leadership position is a perfect example of that, is a perfect representation of that. The Casablanca municipality being linked to Hassan University and attending last week in Marseille is a perfect representation of the political will to advance women in public and leadership positions. And finally, thirdly, universities actually influence the cultural impact of any city. So when university has a leadership position as a woman, population in general see that as a very as a very powerful stance, as a political stance, as a cultural stance, and I think it helps advancing the society in general. So that will be all.
Thank you so much. Thank you for these inspiring considerations. And yes, something we have also listened in Marseille is that participating in an international project gives also more legitimacy to the individual institutions. So that there is this movement forward that we are together moving in the same direction. So now there will be a break. It was foreseen to to be a 15 minutes break, but let's do it a shorter break, a 10 minutes break, and we could be back together, let's say at 11:40. No, sorry. Yeah, 11:50. So thank you.
and welcome back, everyone. Let's allow a second for everyone to come back from the break. By the way, I'm quite pleased to see that most participants are staying with us despite this being a 3 hours webinar, so the numbers don't lie. This is highly encouraging, and I think it's a good sign that we are really hitting a nerve here, that we are finding a topic which is interesting for all of you. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Giuseppe Provenzano, and I manage the dossier of research and innovation, the Union for the Mediterranean. And it would be my pleasure to moderate the second half of this meeting, which is about women leadership in science broadly. I believe that that women leadership is in research and innovation is not a matter of fairness, at least not only when it comes to science, to tech, to development. It's about supporting in a fair way our ecosystem, our societal efficiency, bringing the right talent to the right position, allowing the Mediterranean region, all in all, to be more competitive by allowing the right people to be in the right position. I'm talking about from basic research, from science to deep tech, to startup creation. Barriers hamper staying competitive, and our region simply cannot allow it if it wants to stay and compete in a global ecosystem and waste our bright minds and our talent. This is something simply that we cannot afford. Science speaks a neutral language, a positive language, but sometimes our mental barriers add an often unwelcome accent to this neutral language. But the Mediterranean has a positive story to tell. I don't want to go back as far as Hypatia in Alexandria. Today we are going to see an amazing panel and a clear example of scientific leadership and scientific advice in policy positions. Today we are going to discuss how science and leadership can help address the structural hurdles that prevent female researchers from being in leading position in major international consortia, for instance, in innovation ecosystems. We will explore how to transition from simple participations in the scientific field where the numbers are good to actually leading in research teams, strategic management, or scientific agendas, where the numbers are not so good. How to ensure women are at the forefront of designing solutions for the challenges. I'm going back also to the keynote of Russo, where she talked about participating in leading position means being able to set the correct agenda for our region. And this can be reflected in a very wide array of topics, from climate resilience to deep tech innovation. On this, I am very pleased, before starting our panel, to give the floor to a very distinguished keynote address. We started with the keynote on institutions. Now we are going to have a keynote address on more on the scientific level. We're pretty pleased to have with us Professor Raja Sherkawi Al-Musli from Mohammed V University in Rabat, and a L'Oreal UNESCO Prize for Women in Science, an international renowned Moroccan nuclear physicist, and a leading figure in the global scientific research. In addition to being a professor, is a member of the Hassan II Academy of Science and Technology, with many distinguished roles. For instance, a process experiment on the Atlas experiment at CERN, which contributed to the discovery of the Higgs boson, as well as pioneering the development of medical physics in their home country. A member of the African Academy of Science, in addition to many awards and being recognized in Forbes. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Professor. We would really love to hear your perspective on how women are leading change in science and breaking through the glass ceiling, of course. We know it is sometimes difficult also to find the appropriate data, especially at regional level, Mediterranean level. So we thank you for your address and for bringing your personal path, the role of academia that you see, the barriers that exist today, and of course, your policy recommendation. So Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Jess. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for this invitation. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Today, I would like to share a personal perspective on women in science, and more specifically, the question of recognition and leadership. Let me start with a simple observation, and all colleagues talk about that a few minutes before. Women are already changing science, it's clear. They are in our laboratories, they are leading teams, they are building institutions, they are shaping the future, and yet they are still not fully recognized. The real question is this: is system ready to recognize there, or we have a great question if you want. In the next few minutes, I will show you three things. What the data tell us, what my own journey taught me, and what we can change concretely. If you look to this slide, here I give some numbers. Across region, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, we see the same pattern. At the beginning, women are there. At the top, they are not. If I look to North Africa, for example, we have more than 50% of graduate students in STEAM, more than 40% of researchers, but less than 15 in leadership. I am talking about top management. It's for me, it's very important. This is what we call the leaky pipeline. Women are in the system, but they are not moving up the same rates. This is we call the leaky pipeline. The problem is not a lack of talent. The problem is that the system is not designed to let the talents lead. Next slide, please. Let me say a few words about my own path, not because it's exceptional, but because it reflects a broader message. After my PhD in nuclear physics in Europe, France, I returned to Morocco with a strong conviction. International scientific excellence and national institution building must go hand in hand. That idea has guided my entire journey. It led me first to build my career in nuclear physics, then to contribute to the development of high-energy physics in Morocco through participation in major international laboratories, especially Atlas at CERN, European Organization in Nuclear Physics. And at the same time, I remained deeply committed to higher education and institution building in my country. I had the privilege to leading the nuclear physics laboratory, serving as vice president in my university, Mohammed V University in Rabat. It is very important because it is the mother university, and we have more than 100,000 students. And also training generation of students and young researchers. A very important part of my journey also been to connect fundamental science with societal impacts. This is what led me to help establish Morocco's first master's program in medical physics, because we use exactly the same tools in high energy physics and in medical physics. And so for this, I open new bridge between physics, hospital, healthcare, and human capacity building. And this is very important. For me, the lesson is very clear. Global science and national capacity building are not opposites. They reinforce each other. My path is personal, but the message is collective. Next slide, please. Next slide. This slide shows why academia and recognition matter. Academia, as you know, is not just a workplace. It is where knowledge is produced, students are trained, network built, and legitimacy is created over time. In my case, it allowed me to connect research, teaching, leadership, and societal impacts. Price also matter. I have the chance to have L'Oréal UNESCO, and for me it is very important. I am currently in many jury for women in science in the national and international jury. The prize matter. Why? Not because they define excellence, but because they make it visible. And this is very important. They amplify the voice, they open doors, they create access to decision-making space, and it is my case. And this is important because visibility influences who is heard, who is trusted, and who is invited to lead. In my own experience, Recognized created opportunities to serve in national boards, international jury, and high-level scientific committee, and to contributed more actively in discussion on science, policy, evaluation, and the place of women in science. So the message is simple. Academia builds excellence, and recognition makes it visible. Next slide, please. So, if women are present but not leading, we must be clear. The problem is not women. The problem is the system. The barriers are structural. Many colleagues talk about that. First, careers are still assessed as if everyone had the same trajectory, the same freedom, and the same access to networks. The second, women often take a large share of mentoring, supervision, administration, and institution building. And this essential work that's still under-evaluated. Third, the motherhood wall. It is all the question we talk about in everywhere. Care responsibilities are treated as private matters, while the system continues to reward interrupt careers and constant availability. And finally, too few seats of power. When leadership remains dominated by the same profiles, inequality reproduces itself. So we must stop asking women to adapt endlessly. We need to change the rules, the criteria, and the distribution of power. Next slide, please. Next slide. The issue is not only national, and it is also regional and global. That is why institutions such African Academy of Science and Network of African Science of Academies are important. And I say this from personal experience, and as I serve as vice president in both organizations. This institution helps share standards, connect science with policy, and broaden access to recognition and leadership. Science is also a bridge across Africa and the Mediterranean. It supports cooperation in many domains like health, climate, education, and innovation. Of course, innovation is very important for the future. But the goal is not symbolic inclusion. The goal is to build a real ecosystem of excellence. There, where women help define priorities and lead change. Science diplomacy is not only about knowledge, it is about power, inclusion, and shared futures. Next slide, please. Let me conclude with 5 strategic actions I propose, of course. First, clarify the road. It is important to make criteria for promotion and leadership more transparent. Second, make women visible. Important to balance representation matters. It is important, you know, in many committees. Third, support career early by mentoring and mobility are care. And it is important because I see that this is growing in the world and this is in Africa also. And fourth, reward the full contribution, not only publication. And fifth, publish the number because visibility protects inequality. And when I look for data, there is no mini data. There is in UNESCO, of course, but we have to have more data. And the message is simple. What we measure becomes visible, and what becomes visible can be changed. Next slide, excuse me. And let me close with a very direct message. Women are already changing science in laboratories, universities, hospitals, and beyond. The challenge no longer to prove that women are capable. The challenge is whether institutions are ready to recognize that fairly. And to younger women, I will say, do not wait for permission to feel legitimate. Trust your work, your voice, and your vision. But our responsibility is collective. We must answer that this legitimacy becomes normal, visible, and supported. And let's move from presence to recognition to leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. This is also very, very inspiring words. I mean, I especially thank you for bringing not only your personal story as inspiration, but also for bringing data, which is something that you correctly identified, which is a challenge. It is something where the Union for the Mediterranean also tries to come in, identifying key gaps and trying to bring its platforms and its institution in order to produce knowledge products and for highlighting very clear messages, rules, visibilities, supporting careers, rewarding careers, and giving the numbers. I mean, those were very clear words. They were heard loud and clear. And for this, I thank you for your word. And I'm sure that your points are also going to be further developed during this panel, where we're going to be joined by very distinguished panelists that we're going to introduce now. This panel about scientific leadership, women leadership in science. We are very pleased to be joined by Jihan Kamel, which is the principal scientist and team supervisors at CESAM, Katerina Shvikova, head of sector of gender at the European Commission, Ruba Zubi from the Levant region climate, energy and environment lead of the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and finally by Antonella Autino, a program coordinator at PRIMA, the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean area. I will introduce a bit more the panelists when I was speaking to them first time. I just asked the distinguished guests if they could keep their intervention fair to the point in order to allow everyone to join in. We heard different points that were previously raised by Professor Aja. I would like to explore with the first question to Jihan Kamel, which is very distinguished as a physicist, a powerful advocate for scientific diplomacy. Dr. Kamel is currently serving at the infrared beamline principal scientist and team supervisor at CESAM, and an associate professor from Cairo with the PhD from the University of Rome. Basically, Professor Kamel is connecting all of the Mediterranean, and she's been working in different fields from medicine to archaeology, but she's also a dedicated champion for peaceful scientific cooperation in the Middle East, being heavily involved with the African Light Source and promoting the next generation of female scientists in the Global South. So I would like to ask Professor Kamel, we know that CESAM is one of the major Mediterranean facilities that we have in science, being located in Jordan. So as a principal scientist in it, you sit basically at the intersection of complex scientific ecosystems. So what are the primary structural hurdles that you see that are preventing women from stepping up into the strategic management of these large-scale scientific agendas? So Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Giuseppe. Actually, I'd like to thank you for the kind invitation, and again, the Union for Mediterranean for these efforts and initiatives. That's the third time for me to join your efforts. And I'd like to tell the participants and the kind panelists as well that when Giuseppe sent me the invitation, I had organized a similar event that was just 1 week before receiving the invitation. And again, it was on women in leadership. So apparently everybody is aligned now for this context. So as the respected speakers since the morning also pointed out that leadership is the time to shift for many women scientists. And again, we are all used to measure the contributions or the participation of women in science by numbers, by statistics, how many got opportunities for education, for studying, for graduating, how many managed to jump up or climb to the to higher steps in the management or the leadership. But again, of course, this is still very much important, but I think we need to shift a bit and just step out of this bubble of women in science, because actually we started to hear it like, oh, this is another event on women in science, and we need to break the stereotype of these events. From the perspective of someone who, like as Giuseppe mentioned, I'm Egyptian and I had my PhD in Italy. I came back to work in Jordan. I'm having a lot of connections with Africa to establish the first African light source. I'd like to also share with you a few notes on the context at this region. So first of all, Sesame is the synchrotron light for experimental science and applications in the Middle East. It's a third generation synchrotron light source, and it's the only one in the region. It's usually considered as a brilliant example of science diplomacy, as its members are always those in conflicts and wars, even currently. So for your information, the Sesame members are Jordan, where I am now, and where Sesame is hosted, without alphabetical order, of course, Egypt, Cyprus, Palestine, Israel, Iran, Turkey, and Pakistan. So we are 8 members, founding members of this facility, and it has been huge efforts since late 90s to have it finally operational, and got operational 2017. So it took more than 20 years to have this facility on feet in this region. And currently, of course, we are still determined to survive and to stay here. If you want to have some perspectives about women in science in the Middle East or Africa, taking Sesame as an example, I'd like to say that there are, of course, many challenges those many women scientists are still facing, still at the level of access to scientific research facilities, to have better opportunities, career development, and again, talking about management and leadership is something that keep proving itself more than ever that it's a matter of structure. So it's a structural barrier. It's not related to the women itself, women themselves as having skills or capabilities. Yeah, it's something in the structure or the organizational charts of these institutions. And I would like to also to say that in our region, it's mostly well known that there are a kind of regular or common pathways to management, even for men, not only for women. And most leadership positions are taken as informal connections or networking or a better networking. Taking also the advantage that they are relying on that there are a lot of assumptions and stereotypes of problems or challenges for women to get uninterrupted careers, constant mobility, ability to travel whenever is possible. And this also sort of like a bubble of stereotypes that women in science and consequently women in leadership are facing. I'd like also to say that in our institution or in different institutions in the region, the universities or research centers, I would say that these institutions or the management, they show really a good trust. So women are trusted with responsibility in running experiments, in coordinating projects or collaborations, managing or solving problems for the facilities. But again, if you want to see if these institutions are really acknowledging the leadership position or the leadership capability of women scientists, again, this stays really harder to access, because apparently many of these institutions are fine with having women participating in scientific activities, but there is still some issues when they jump into leadership positions. I'd like also to say that usually from different experiences, here women are like, they're often brought to leadership after the decision is being made. So we are not in the same room where the decision is being made. We come after. So we come at the implementation stage, not at the decision making or the policy making stage. Some other aspect that touches also the Middle East, Sesame in the Middle East or Africa, is again the access or the scope of the science diplomacy. And again, this opens, I would say, a new horizon for leadership position as science diplomats. So it's not only related to performing or conducting experiments in the lab, publishing papers, and that's it. No, leadership here takes a different axis, takes different horizons, and extends as much as possible for the scientist. And I just want to end this contribution here with this question that I really, from my experience, I really don't like to keep always blaming alone the system or blaming alone the institution. Yeah. So I don't want to be a leader because I'm a woman. I want to be a leader because I'm qualified to be a leader. Yeah. So that means a lot of work is to be done. We have to be very well prepared. We have to be really qualified, that we are chosen for a leadership position because we have the qualifications of a leader, yeah, the soft skills of a leader, not chosen because I'm a woman in the institution. So I think it's two-sided issues. For the systems is to put the structure, and for the women scientists is to work hard on having better qualifications.
Thank you. This was quite enriching, and indeed, thanks for also making the case for Sesame that for us, the work on science diplomacy in the Mediterranean, we know is some sort of a candle lit in dark times, bringing attention to the importance of keeping the bridges open on science. And also, it's very important the message you sent on breaking stereotypes. And for this event, by the way, we took a decision not to have it in the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. It's the second edition of this event. We had one last year in Feb, but this year we decided specifically not to consecrate one day for it. So I see that we are on the same line.
That's great.
And the point on qualification also through soft skills, it is quite interesting, and I think it should be noted also for our recommendation. We'll come to this back later for the second round of question, but you raised also some very important points about policies. So this is why I'm very pleased to welcome our second speaker, which is Katerina Svichkova, which is the head of sector in DG Research and Innovation for questions of gender. She has more than 15 years of experience in the European Commission. She's been working on policy development, implementation, analysis in different areas such as security, knowledge for policy, rule of law, and finally, of course, gender equality. In her current function, she steers the development and implementation of policies that advance inclusive gender equality in research and innovation in the European research area. So we feel that we spoke about her work a lot today. So it's very great to be hearing from her, especially I would like to ask her that since we know that policy leadership works best as a collective effort, could you share some results from Horizon Europe and discuss how the Commission managed to successfully increase women's participation at a structural level?
Thank you.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. And I would like to thank you and the organizers for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to be part of the webinar and such an interesting and despite the big gender gap, still uplifting conversation that we are having here. And I would also like to thank you for the question. And I think the World Collective is exactly where I would like to start. Because if there is one thing that I am fully aware of, having all the experience so far from policy, it's that no single institution, not even one with the reach of the European Commission, can drive this kind of change alone. So what we can do, for example, is to set the enabling conditions to give visibility, to give direction, but and use our policy tools, funding instruments, convening power to create a framework where everyone, the member states, universities, research organizations, companies, and individuals can step up and lead. And today, indeed, I would like to show you that when it's done right, it can work. So Horizon Europe, which is our main research and innovation program running now from 2021 to 2027, made a clear political choice. Gender equality was embedded, and it is not an add-on. It is a cross-cutting priority embedded in how we design, evaluate, and fund research across the board. And this was a deliberate step up from the previous European EU level framework programs, where with this program we went from encouraging good practice to making certain things mandatory. And that shift, it is turning out that it really matters. So let me explain maybe what it means in practice. And I would have three things concretely. The first are the gender equality plans, which are now an eligibility condition. Since 2022 onwards, if you are a university, a research organization, or a public body from an EU member state or associated country applying for Horizon Europe funding, you must have a gender equality plan, a GEP, in place in your organization. And not just a paper, it must be a public document signed by top management and backed by top management. It must have a dedicated resources and staff for its implementation. And it also must include data monitoring, regular data monitoring, and evaluation, and then feeding back into the implementation. In 2025, more than 80% of the organizations that are concerned by this eligibility criterion already had a GEP in place when they were submitting their research proposal to be part of the consortia applying for funding. So that is a real structural lever, and it is already changing also institutions from the inside. The Gender Equality Plan forces an organization to look honestly at its own data. How many women do we have in leadership positions? What is the gender breakdown by career stage? What happens to women's careers at the key transition points? And then it also requires the plan to have a plan to do something about it. We know from experience that including from schemes like Athena Swan in the UK and in Ireland, which preceded us and inspired many of our approaches, that when institutional change is linked to funding access, things move. Organizations don't just write plans, they also implement them. And they create internal structures, they train managers, they review recruitment processes. So the GEP requirement in Horizon Europe is driving that same dynamic across the whole Europe and in also associated countries. The second provision I would like to talk is the gender dimension in research content, which is now mandatory under Horizon Europe. So it is no longer enough to promise a balanced team. Researchers must actually think about whether sex and gender affect even the questions they ask, the methods they use, and the results that they produce. And this is then evaluated under the excellence criterion, excellent science. The logic is simple. Better science considers everyone. And integrating the gender dimension into research leads to more relevant, more robust results for society. And the third lever we have in Horizon Europe is gender balance in teams as a ranking criterion, which was shifted from gender balance in teams even to gender balance in lead positions in the projects as a ranking criterion. So when proposals are tied on score, they receive equal score, the gender balance of the leaders, leading positions in the consortium becomes a deciding factor. This sends a clear message to every consortium building their team. Diversity is part of what we value. And now, what does it actually translate into? So I would like to give you some numbers because I think they are genuinely encouraging. Women project coordinators in Horizon Europe now stand at 31%. That compares to 23% under the previous program, Horizon 2020. This is a significant jump at 8 percentage point increase in the share of women leading major international research consortia. And this is exactly the shift that we are looking for, not just participation in teams, but leadership of them. Another statistic I would like to mention is that women make up around 30 or 38% of researchers in Horizon Europe, and over 51% participants in Horizon Europe boards and expert groups. So more than half, this means that more than half of the people shaping how Horizon Europe works as evaluators, as advisors, as board members, they are now women. And that is not a small thing. It's because we also heard from the distinguished speakers before, who sits in those rooms really matters for what decisions are taken and for what gets funded and how. But we also know that the work is not done. That is why Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation, Commissioner Zaharieva, announced a first ever EU action plan for women in research, innovation and startups. The ambition is bold, to make the EU the world's most attractive destination for women in these fields by 2030. We are now developing the plan which the Commission will present later this year. And the Commission is now also preparing the European Research Area Act. It will explicitly safeguard fundamental values across the entire European research ecosystem, including gender equality and equal opportunities. It's about making these commitments durable, predictable, and enforceable, not just aspirations, but having an architecture for that. So to wrap up, the story of Horizon Europe on gender equality is a story of using every lever that we have: eligibility, evaluation criteria, funding, monitoring, legislation, to create an environment where women can lead. And the numbers tell us it's working, not fast enough, not everywhere, not yet fully, but the direction is clear and the momentum is real. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, this has been very inspiring. Also to hear that policies work, and the 8% increase from 23 to 31% of women project coordinators shows that when we play with the right tools, and understanding what are the right tools is the first part of the story. The second part of the story is understanding how to do it and having the political will for doing it. It shows that things can change and we have a story to tell. And I mean, you also mentioned that it was a political choice to change these levels. So we said at the beginning that science was a neutral language. Our mindset, it's not neutral, but political choices are a way of rebalancing and shifting this mindset. And we take note also that there is a new plan coming up, which is going to complement the gender equality plans, the new obligations. And really, the European Commission knows how to be a trailblazers when it counts. And it's encouraging and heartening to see that we are able to put our money where our mouth is in these cases and really advance it. We're going to come back to you again for the second round of questions, but thank you again. Now I would like to shift to a different nuance in the discussion where scientists can have a role and really impact, because now I would like to talk more about scientific advice and impacting policymaking, which is something where we are not usually trained our scientists to work on, but it's incredibly important, and it's sometimes a barrier in accessing policymaking, which is not very much evident when we think about this. But we are very lucky because we have with us Ruba Zubi, which is the 11th Regional Climate, Energy and Environment Lead for UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And she's a global leader, staunch advocate in the fields of environmental policy, climate finance, and the green economy. She used the words for herself as a re-engineered engineer. So we are curious about that. And she has over 23 years of experience across the public, the private, and non-profit sector in the MENA region. And interestingly enough, her career led her to be acting as the first policy director of the Ministry of Environment in Jordan, a dedicated champion for sustainable development. She has co-founded the Jordan Green Building Council and contributed to the Jordan strategy Green Jordan. So basically, juggling between leadership roles and supporting Women in Renewable Energy Association, which is, really a kind of profile which struggles across the different pillars of science for policy advice. So, Ruba, we know that your work involves the crucial steps of moving from science to society and policy making. What are the broad enablers and barriers that you see when women attempt to claim leadership roles in these spheres? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Hello, everyone. It has been a pleasure to listen to all the inspiring speeches and insights and experiences. And allow me to share also part of things that I've learned throughout my journey. So yeah, I'm an engineer by education, and I had to do a TED talk a few years back, and I just wondered what would my journey mean or matter to others around the world. And one key aspect that I discovered in myself is that I keep asking why and how to make a difference. And Jordan is one of the countries that has a very high number of engineers, including women engineers. So we don't have a short in terms of women in STEM and engineering and science. But unfortunately, the contribution and the participation in the economy is a different story. I think we have a sort of an engineer for every 50 people in Jordan, which is a very high number. And I always ask myself, what makes me different? How can I add value? And the word impact started to become very important for me, especially when you move on your career. So some of the enablers that I would like to highlight are probably structural changes, policy reforms, working on things that my other esteemed colleagues on the panel have already mentioned. But I also want to mention that the key enablers lie in the women themselves. And since I do mentorship now, I always remind my mentees, whether males or females, that we have to create the environment for us to thrive. We have to wake up every morning with a self-motivation, with energy, and with determination and confidence that we can make a difference. Unfortunately, when I started my career, there was no such trend of mentorship and coaching and networks, or maybe I did not have access to those back then. But I think what I've seen is that one word of saying, I've been there, I've been in your place, you can make it, don't give up, can mean a lot of things for a woman who's just starting her career, especially in science, engineering. And because when we start our careers, we don't always start within a scientific institution. We're usually supporting a scientific or a private sector or a government entity. So understanding how others think is very important. One of the enablers is to work on your understanding and appreciation of the other. And the other, by that I mean the other community member, colleague, a person who doesn't have a scientific background, who doesn't think the way you think. And then accordingly develop your own communication and positioning skills. And the other enabler that I also found very, very important is that the world is changing so fast. And today's world, our region today is so different, and it's going to evolve into something else. There's a lot around technology, around how development aid works today, about humanitarian crisis, conflict, AI, and youth leading and forming the majority of the population. So keeping the gender inclusion as basic or as conventional as it used to be decades ago is not fair. So I think in addition to gender not being about numbers, so numbers are great, they're a good start, definitely, in many places, but they do not guarantee equity in the career advancement. And that's why while we succeed in integration, inclusion, numbers, we do the check box, we do not have sufficient achievement in terms of leadership and career advancement and contributions to decision-making and policy. The other part is, I think we need to also rethink the models for gender and inclusion, because part of it is definitely equity. It's a very important piece, especially when we talk about rights to water, to climate resilience, to green sort of and healthy environment and opportunities. There's a lot to talk about there, but I think we have to move towards real transformation, and women are and could even become widely driving and transforming and leading how we shape our new sustainable development vision. We need to give them the chance, and they need to ensure that they get themselves exposed to what's going on. The world is changing so fast. Different sectors are also, in a very dynamic status. And also, you have to build resilience and thick skin to be able to manage and handle all the potential challenges that could arise anywhere. And this is very normal. What I found no one to say is like, it's okay, but you have to be persistent. You have to keep going. And I think this is a real message. And for those women who actually reach a leadership position, you will have a larger responsibility, because you have to bring up all the women in that sector, in that organization, or even beyond. And you have to be the change that you were advocating for before you had your chance, right? So I think it's very important to support women in defining their own pathways. I know many scientists and engineers who have the mindset, the skills, and the willingness to influence policymaking, to influence community work. And we should be appreciating that we are in a world where the intersections between things are very much the challenge of today. So it is about humanitarian and climate resilience. It is about floods and extreme weather conditions and ability of cities and towns to actually absorb and manage those shocks. It is about women acting as good mothers and housewives, managing resources that are getting less available, but at the same time, finding her place in and participating in her community and sort of country and regional development. So it is a pathway that everyone has the chance or the right to choose, but I think we have to enable women to expose themselves to the opportunities out there.
Thank you very much. I think that we can all see that you have experience in mentoring, because the words were quite encouraging and calls for action, and we can all subscribe to it. I also took note that of your push for more quality instead of quantity, and instead, gender is not about number, which for me is a bit surprising, coming from an engineer, but fully subscribed to as a social scientist. And indeed, we will need to avoid checking boxes when we have these policies that are set up, because it's not just a matter of getting the funding. It's a matter of impacting our society. What does it mean in managing resources? What does it mean in improving the impact to our people, in how things are done? And in the end, our community is all the reason that we develop our communities, our minds, that we train in academies, is for serving our communities. So seeing and developing the role of women leaders in scientific community as a way of giving back to our communities, it's a way of seeing in a holistic way. So thank you very much. I think that there were many notes that I took, and it's quite interesting. When we talk about policies, one of the clear examples that come to our mind, it's also the good work that is being advanced by the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean area, the PRIMA initiative. We heard before about the European Commission, which is of course serving the whole European Union. But when it comes to the Euro-Mediterranean Union, PRIMA for us, it's also an excellence story, not only because they are our physical neighbor and they're hosted by the Union for the Mediterranean, but because they have demonstrated that we can achieve science diplomacy, like Cézanne. We can work together. We can create and activate a research agenda by having funding together, by working together. So I'm very pleased to introduce Antonella Autino, which is the program coordinator, but she also holds a doctoral degree in environmental scientist. So she rightly sits in this panel with over 20 years of experience on research and innovation. And she's been specializing on Euro-Mediterranean cooperation, strategic programming, and science diplomacy. The Partnership for Research and Innovation Mediterranean area, for those of you that don't know it, it's an EU institutionalized partnership under the famous for us Article 185, where she has been involved in developing the program, the implementation, the monitoring, basically that everything that concerns it. She has been working previously as a researcher at the University of Siena in environmental science, agri-food biotechnology, food traceability, and European research cooperation. So, as you can see, she has the perfect profile for now answering to us on how did Prima push for actually supporting the gender dimension in its project, which kind of policies. And we would love to hear about the strategic approach that you have been taking for boosting women's leadership and visibility in science. So Antonella.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe,
please.
for your introduction. And for the invitation and all the inspiring words by the speakers before me. My contribution now is very much aligned with many of the contribution we had before. This topic is really close to my heart, and let's say, I feel very deeply connected, both professionally and personally. So, and I think one message has already emerged very clearly from the discussion today. The challenge is not only to ensure women participation in science, but to enable the transition from participation to leadership. And this is exactly where a program like Prima, it's a new partnership for research and innovation Mediterranean, could make a difference. Prima is implemented through annual programs and calls. It was launched in 2018 under following Horizon 2020 rules, and now it's been extended since 2025 under Horizon Europe rule. So from 2025, as Ms. Kashkeva said before, the gender equality started to be a requirement, while under Horizon 2020, where Prima operates from 2018 to 2024, which it was just an encouragement. But we have pushed for the gender equality from the outset. Because if we truly want women to be at the helm of science and innovation in the Mediterranean, we really need to go beyond the idea of simply including women in projects. We need to create the condition for women to shape the research agenda, to lead the consortia, to influence innovation pathway, and contribute to strategic decision-making. From our perspective, this is not just a question of representation, so gender balance, even if it's very important, it's a question of how research and innovation systems are in fact designed. And the gap we are facing is structural. It is linked to institutional culture, unequal access to leadership opportunity, as we know, persistent bias in recruitment and career progression. Of this we heard about as well, and the reality of women's contribution are still too often more visible at an operational level than a strategic level. And in the Mediterranean context, these barriers can be even more pronounced, especially in sectors such as agri-food, water, environment, and natural resource management. So what Prima has tried to do in address this challenge is to address this in a structural, practical, and forward-looking way. So first, Prima align itself with Horizon Europe framework and requirement on gender equality, even if PRIMA was operating under Horizon 2020 rules. So we encourage and push for this and then it became a requirement from 2025. So, and now the approach is even more relevant in light of the European Commission Gender Equality Strategy that has been referred to before me. So, as we have already heard today by Deputy Director Russo and from Mrs. Zvikchova, structural change requires structural instruments. So, and the new strategy confirms that gender equality must be embedded across all areas of policy and society, including research and innovation and digital transformation. So in this sense, PRIMA approach is fully aligned with the broader European direction. Gender equality is not treated as a side issue, but as a structural condition for a more inclusive and relevant and impactful research and innovation. So that is why we have requested the gender equality plan for the relay organization, EU member states and associated countries, even if we were operating under Horizon 2020. And PRIMA has encouraged this approach beyond recommending to participant organizations, also of Southern Mediterranean partner countries, so the third countries, such as Lebanon, Jordan, Morocco, and Algeria. And this year, for the first time, this requirement also applies to Egypt because they are because of their association to Horizon Europe. So this is something that we are already operationally implementing. This is an important step because leadership does not change through goodwill alone, unfortunately. So it changes when institutions are expected to create those enabling conditions that we were referring to before. So these are not secondary issues. There are real conditions that determine whether women can move from really participation to leadership. So let me briefly mention how PRIMA stands in practice through its call. Looking PRIMA-funded project from 2018 and 25, PRIMA has shown encouraging progress over time. Especially in specific year in 2021, where the trends were particularly positive overall, but we have at 38 or 39% of projects coordinated by women. So this is very good number, while 37 of researchers participating in project teams were women. And the same we are applying for our evaluator, where we have quite a balance between men evaluator and women evaluator. So these figures show that women already play a substantial role in PRIMA-funded research and innovation, but they also show that the gender balance remains a work in progress. So the challenge is not only to increase participation, but also to strengthen women's leadership visibility and influence across the full research and innovation cycle. For PRIMA, as I was saying before, the most important is not really only number. So gender balance in consortium. For us, the most important is to push for it integrated the gender dimension in research and innovation itself. This was particularly challenging, also because it was not very well understood at the beginning. We have not focused, so we have promoted integration of the gender dimension into the content of research and innovation, also to training, because as I said, it was not so clear, was not so direct, and we try to make it, let's say, more integrated in the research plan. In the work plan they were project were implementing. And at the end, we have recently conducted a survey on project implemented under the Horizon 2020 and rules to assess how the gender dimension was really addressed across funded projects, even if it's not really a requirement. But the finding, in fact, were very encouraging. Also, after our efforts in training and so to make encouraging through our work programs and also through evaluation, of course, the fact of having the gender dimension integrated in the work program. So 78% at the end of project reported that gender equality had already been considered at the project design stage, and 59% said that they had developed specific gender-oriented research and innovation activities, and importantly, 54% of coordinators reported a positive impact on the acceptance of innovation after integrating the gender dimension. I will make some reference after, if I have time, later to specific example of project where that show how our project, in fact, integrated this gender dimension. So gender is not an add-on. It shapes how needs are identified, how solutions are designed, and how technology are adopted. So if we ignore gender when designing innovation, we risk producing solutions that are less inclusive, less effective, and less likely to be taken up by the community they are intended to serve. So from Prima point of view, supporting the gender dimension means really improving not only fairness, but the quality and relevance of the research and innovation outcome. And this is the reason why we are pushing so strongly on this direction. Because the truth is that women do not fail, in fact, to lead because they lack competence, as it has been demonstrated before. Very often they face systems that were not designed to support their progression, their recognition, or their long-term presence in strategic roles. So when we speak about women leadership, we are not speaking only about individual, we are speaking about institution, governance models, and working environment. So finally, Prima has also worked on visibility and recognition, which has been said by the previous speaker and keynote reference before, that is quite important. One concrete example, we did 2 consecutive editions of Prima Women Greening Food System Award that was launched to recognize and celebrate women contributing to more sustainable, resilient, and transformative food system across the Mediterranean. The award gave the visibility to women-led innovation, providing 2 recognition prizes, together wider public and media visibility. To give just a couple of examples of the awardee, we have several others.
Maybe we can go back to the second round about concrete examples.
Okay. And if I have to summarize the strategic approach, I would say that it stands on 4 pillars. First, the institutional change through tools such as gender equality plan, better research and innovation design by integrating the gender dimension into project content. Thirdly, inclusive implementation by encouraging gender balance also in managerial and supervisory roles. And fourth, evidence and visibility, because what gets measured, what gets recognized is far more likely to be sustained on the long run. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Antonella. Some points were quite clear, and also you were translating into Euro-Mediterranean levels. Many of the points were already raised both at EU level and by the concrete experience of the colleagues about transition to real leadership. It's not simply including women, and also raising the point that perhaps in the agri-food sector seems to be a more male-dominated field. Traditionally, there are some specific challenges that Prima has been trying to address, finding also space, policy space within the Horizon rules. It's very interesting what you mentioned. We are now slightly delayed, but at least 10, 15 minutes. But having convened such a distinguished panel of experts, it would be a pity not to ask at least a concrete case, a concrete example, one concrete enables that you might want to highlight as something that help transform the theory into practice, something that works also for our recommendation at the end. But since we are quite short on time, I will kindly ask all of you to keep your answer within 1 or 2 minutes, but it's still very interesting. So we really would like to also go for a very quick second round of question. So I'd like to ask to Dr. Jihen if she could share a concrete example or one specific enabler that has helped female researchers transition into top leadership roles into international consortia. So please.
Thank you so much, Giuseppe. I'll be also fast in favor of time, so I'll try to just deliver a very quick messages. So the basic concept for us is that we want, apart from setting a successful example of women in leadership positions, is not to have it as a single intervention, less like one process or one step forward. This needs to be intentional sequence of actions and policies. And if I give a couple of examples, is what we can call it as a sponsorship. I see it as a sponsorship, not mentoring, not like to mentor or train. Sponsorship from senior leadership is quite important and quite motivating and encouraging to get better and to enhance the women leadership statistics, if I would say that. And in this sense, I would say that, for example, the senior leadership can delegate women researchers or scientists to represent the institution in international activities, to nominate them to be members of committees like scientific committees or science policy, scientific advisory committees, to be involved in setting projects, long-term planning of institutional development and discussion. So I just want to point out that sponsorship really changed the issue, and it changed the power dynamics. It shifts the dynamics from only having men as leaders, but it takes the scope also and the focus to having women as leaders. So early inclusion in strategic decision making, not at the implementation phase when everything is ready. So we are invited to execute this strategy. No, we want to be part of this strategy, and the active sponsorship of senior leaderships and senior leaders, and I would say also the pushing, like putting them in the front line, encouraging them, which again doesn't leave a space of the stereotypes. And again, I keep saying it, we do not want to be leaders because we are women. We want to be leaders because we are qualified and we have the skills needed for leaders. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting opinion, and sponsorship, not mentoring, is a word resonating also I can see from the chat. So this is really a good point to make. I would like to ask now Caterina, coming with the voice a bit of the perspective of the Commission, if she see a specific enabler at the EU level, a policy tool, maybe including the European Innovation Council or targeted funding, something that you would really like to point out to.
Yes, thank you. And I will also try to be focused. So indeed, the European Innovation Council is a very good example that I wanted definitely to mention here. The EIC, the European Innovation Council, is Europe's flagship instrument for funding breakthrough innovations and scaling up deep tech companies. And a few years ago, it looked like so much of the innovation world, dominated by all-male teams with women largely invisible as leaders and also as founders. Just to illustrate, in 2020, only 8% of companies in the EIC Accelerator, that's the program that provides up to 2.5 million euros in grants and equity instrument investment, were led by women, just 8%. That number was not an accident. It reflected all the structural biases in the system that we talked about here. Who gets taken seriously as a founder, who gets invited to pitch, who sits on the selection boards, who gets the early capital. And then the EIC decided to treat this as a priority. So not as a side initiative, but as a strategic commitment again. And they introduced specific measures that prioritized women CEOs in invitations to accelerators interviews, for example. They launched a program, Women Tech EU, which provides 75,000 euros of non-dilutive grants and a tailored business development program, including mentoring, coaching, visibility to women-led deep tech startups at an early stage. They created the Women Leadership Program, which is a leadership development initiative for women researchers and entrepreneurs from across the EIC community. And they established the European Prize for Women Innovators, jointly with the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, to celebrate role models and inspire the next generation. The result of all these combined levers and actions, by 2024, 30% of companies in the EIC Accelerator were led by women. So we have a shift from 8% to 30% in 4 years. And that's well above the market average. Overall, the EIC has invested over 360 million euros in women-led deep tech companies in this period. And we see the results, and we know that this is not charity. This is very smart investment into untapped talent. There is also a broader economic argument here that we should not be shy about making, and that is that women-led or women-founded tech companies grow faster. We have studies that show that they grow 1.2 times faster than their competitors. So the EIC, as an example here, is proving that when public institutions commit to changing the system changes.
That is quite significant what you mentioned, and I will retain this piece of information that women-led companies grow faster. This is very encouraging piece of information. We often discuss what does it mean to, at policy level, to have a European innovation ecosystem compared to what we have in the US or in China, anywhere in the world. Perhaps this is one of the key parts of the European innovation ecosystem for the future. Thank you very much for your point. I would like now to ask Ruba, looking at practical enablers, what models work best for enabling women leadership from your perspective?
So I think there's no recipe that works everywhere in every sector in every time. So that's an important contextual differentiator that we should keep in mind. It is sometimes even very tricky to bring models that worked somewhere and just try to parachute them on certain contexts. So it's very important to customize. But from my experience in Jordan, the region, it has to be very much in harmony with the local context. It has to come from the needs of the women in the society, and it has to link to their contributions, competencies, as well as their families and parents' ability to understand and change the cultural norms around some of those models. Part of my voluntary work was with NJAZ, which is an organization in Jordan tackling education and upskilling and entrepreneurship support for school children. And I was given this, session for a 4th grade female student class. And they were like, we really want to be engineers and we want to work like you and we want to succeed, but can you go give this session to our parents? And I think something that we need to keep in mind is that not all women or girls even are raised to be confident and be able to communicate their needs, their ambitions, their aspirations. So some of the good examples are science communication trainings. And I think we need to anchor this everywhere. So science communication enables scientists to communicate with non-scientists and the public about their scientific contributions, knowledge, because sometimes we just get disconnected when there's a long, with all due respect, of course, but when there's a long report, a long published paper that might not be understood or as appealing to other people. Another example, and I think there was one question in the chat, is how could organizations ensure that they have enabling environment for women to become leaders or take leading positions. One of the key things that I also learned from working with the renewable energy companies in Jordan is even if the CEO is committed, they have gender mainstreaming or engendering strategy, and they talk about how much they believe in the power of women in this sector. The subconscious bias supersedes in many cases. So we really, really need to address the subconscious bias. I know it's not easy, but these are the attitudes, the mindsets, things that are not clear. So how do we make sure that we also create the change we want in the mindsets of the people that we want them to also create change within their organizations? And one thing that I found very also interesting is that male sponsors, and I want to explain the difference between sponsors and mentors. So mentors share knowledge and support in personal development and coaching, versus sponsors, it's a very well-known term. It's not very old, but it has been there. They support with career advancement opportunities. So they suggest you for board memberships. They give you opportunities to move from one career to the other, or to access funds and so on. So yes, a sponsor might be a mentor, but the mentor is totally different and offer different sort of services or support. So sponsorship from male leaders is definitely something that we need to focus on, and creating networks of such sponsors where women that have certain ambitions to access certain sectors, become a board member, join a new level of career or a new stage of career advancement, can reach out to those members, or can maybe engage with them in certain networks. Because one thing we want to break is women working only with women and men working only with men. It doesn't create the gender inclusion we want. So we really want to show how an inclusive workspace and environment and board looks like. And we need to encourage, incentivize, recognize the non-female, supporters and leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see a focus on cultural norms and shifting mindset, which is very important, and also mentoring. For you, it's a call to action, more holistic. And on science communication training, so we hear you loud and clear. Actually, we ran a science for policy workshop with the Joint Research Center last year here in Spain. Perhaps it's a call for organizing the next one in Jordan. There will be already something for the immediate follow-up. But thank you for your points. I mean, they're absolutely interesting, and I took note of them. Now I would like to ask instead to Antonella, to Prima. She was very passionate about project. I would like to ask her if she could present a concrete case or concrete project which have been supporting women-led or women empowering green innovation. Antonella.
Yes, thank you very much. I will be short because I know that they're short of time. So I would like to concentrate on a project and an example that for me is particularly powerful example for Prima, which is a project called Halo Farm. This project worked on transforming degraded saline lands into productive agriculture zone through halophyte-based solution. So combining environmental restoration with new livelihood opportunities. That what makes especially important for today's discussion is that it's also generated a concrete pathway for female entrepreneurship within the project. A Tunisia postdoctoral researcher at the Center of Biotechnology of Borj, CEDRIA, carried out highly specialized work on in vitro propagation of halophytes, and her research really helped establish the scientific and operational basis for a startup called Halo Nursery. So then she participated and she contributed to the setup of this enterprise, focusing on producing salt-tolerant plants for ecological restoration and sustainable agricultural use. So I think this is a very powerful example because stemming from the result of the project, there was this entrepreneurship pathway led by, in fact, a woman, showing that the full chain from scientific research to applied innovation and then to women's entrepreneurship and to concrete socioeconomic and environmental impact. So I think this is the example I would like to give. Then there are many other from other projects and of course our award that I think there is no much time for it. So
it's a call for action for going to the Prima website and seeing all this wonderful project.
Yeah, and very shortly, what we in Prima, we are also thinking about the future. So, and now we are pushing very hard also to put in the gender dimension really in the next partnership program.
Thank you very much. Those are some very concrete projects, and I mean they show that I mean from policy to action, there are lots of action where I mean women-led projects already advancing and bringing change to our region. I would really like to thank all of you, of you as panelists, of course, for bringing so many interesting points, and of course all of the public for staying, even though we are 15 minutes late with us, and of course all the interpreters and participants. It would be really difficult for me to bring some conclusions after all of this very interesting point. Luckily for me, I won't be doing it, as I would like to give the floor to Petra Cashman, that is going to give us some conclusion and enlightening final remarks. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Giuseppe, for a brilliant moderation. I feel blessed with this debate.
You might want to get closer to your microphone.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah. It was a very rich and inspiring debate that I'm sure will help us and stimulate us in all our future work. Just to recap very, very shortly, I think the underlying message that we need to make loud and clear on every single occasion is that with all the regional challenges that we face, we simply don't have the luxury to put any limit to the talent that is out there. And that it's not so much about supporting women to access leadership positions, but it is also and above all supporting institutions and the whole region to benefit from this leadership talent and potential. We recognized the persisting gender gap in leadership, but what I found even more important was that we recognize also the positive trends. That was something that came very clearly with very concrete numbers from different programs that were represented. The positive trends are there, but as you know, I mean, it's one thing achieving them, but then other things sustaining them. And with gender equality, sustaining is always the big challenge. In terms of tools and policies, we agreed that it's very important to have them, but even more important to make them actionable. Actionable through numbers. There was a lot of support in terms of having clear numbers that make everything visible, both the negative and the positive trends. We agreed on the importance of having clear rules or standardized protocols, as Isabel said, of having top-down support to all this bottom-up movement, as was clearly presented some vice rectors and presidents. There was also the concept of sponsorship that came out very clearly at the end, and I was very pleased to see the exchange in the chat. If you manage to follow up on anything you take away from this webinar, then I think we can call it a successful one. And then in parallel, another message that came out very clearly for me was the importance of regional cooperation, of joining forces to gain scale, to reinforce the legitimacy, but also to strengthen the support community, of sharing notes, of comparing experience, and really to optimizing the whole process. And as for the process, we all agree that it's work in process, indeed. And this webinar was just one of the milestones along this path. We were pleased to see that more than 100 institutions and individuals connected today. But again, as we heard on many by many speakers, it's not about numbers. It's not only about numbers. It's also about the quality. And the fact that we connected some of the leading institutions and programs in this exchange, and now trying to connect on certain points of the debate to bring this agenda even further, is something that made this debate from our perspective very meaningful. Now, the UFM will keep its promise, both at the level of supporting universities, supporting stakeholders, research institutions in the reforms, but also at the level of bringing this agenda, as I said at the beginning, closer to governments, to our 43 member states. We will bring it to the platform meetings, which are the governmental meetings at the working level, but we will also bring it to the ministerial meetings that we plan for next year. So all this to say that we look forward to next chapters. There's still a long way to go, but it's very reassuring to see that the trends are positive. Many thanks for your contribution, not only to this webinar, but to the transformation process that is in motion. Thank you and have a good day.